Hello my dear students, welcome to our online class. I am Anju Sharma, your English teacher. This video class is for class 5 topic, chapter number 5 from your Mulberry book, English Mulberry book, which is titled as Peter and Wendy. Peter and Wendy, written by Sir James Matthew Barrie. This video is Peter and Wendy part 1. In this video class, we'll study the explanation of the chapter. I'll teach you the explanation of the chapter about author and word meanings. Before starting the explanation of this chapter, let us read something about the author of this chapter. The author of this chapter is Peter and Wendy, Sir James Matthew Barrie. This chapter is adapted from Peter Pan, or the boy who wouldn't grow up. Sir James Matthew Barrie, from 1860 to 1937. He was a Scottish novelist and playwright, writer of scripts for plays. Barrie started writing stories like Peter Pan or The Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up, while making up stories about adventures with pirates and sailing to different islands to entertain children. So children, our next topic is word meaning. First word is nursery. Nursery means a room for the use of young children. Number 2 is rummaging. Rummaging means searching untidily through something. Searching untidily through something means very untidy manner. You are searching something in untidy manner. C is fairy dust. Fairy dust means a powder, glittery magical powder that fairies have. Generally, the fairies use this powder. D, chest of drawers. A piece of furniture used for storage that has only drawers. Chest of drawers means an organizer or something which have only 4 or 5 drawers. A piece of furniture used for storage that has only drawers. E, shudder. Shudder means a series of shivering and shaking. A series of shivering and shaking. F, ceremonies. Ceremonies, children, you know, formal gatherings to celebrate an important event, like any birthday, marriages and ceremonies. G, draggled. Draggled means dirty, wet. H, I dare say. I dare say means I dare to say. Here, I, clenched. Clench means pressed together tightly. If you are having something, a paining, and you don't want to show this pain, so you press together tightly your teeth. J, glee. Glee means great delight. Glee means great delight. K, conceited. Conceited means extremely proud of oneself. I, sarcasm. Saying opposite of what one actually means. Sarcasm, saying opposite of what one actually means. So these are the word meanings which I have explained you. I hope it's clear to you. So students, let's begin our today's chapter. Our today's chapter is chapter number 5, Peter and Wendy. So we are going to study the explanation of this chapter, Peter and Wendy. Now this is a story of, there is a story of Peter Pan. Peter Pan, you know children, he's a mischievous boy, mischievous but innocent boy. Mischievous but innocent boy, who spent his never-ending childhood on the faraway magical island of Neverland with fairies, pirates and mermaids. You know children, what's the meaning of what is the fairies? Fairies means who's having magical power, pirates, sea robbers and mermaids, you know, you can say jalpari. So sometimes he also visited to ordinary children too. One night, you know what happened? Mrs. Darling, who was telling stories to her children. The children, Wendy, John and Michael and Nana, their dog. Same time, Peter was also there at the window and was listening the bedtime story by Mrs. Darling. Nana, their dog, entered and sprung at Peter. While trying to escape, he loses his shadow, and after some days he returns with the Tinker Bell to find his shadow. So children, I would like to ask you to open your book at page number 67, our first paragraph. There was another light in the room now, 1,000 times brighter than the night lights, going in and out of all the drawers in the nursery. Nursery, you know, a room for the use of young children. Looking for Peter's shadow, rummaging, searching untidily through something, rummaging the wardrobe and turning every pocket inside out. It was not really a light. It made this light was flashing about so quickly. But when it came to rest for a second, you saw it was a fairy. No longer than your hand, but still growing. It was a girl called Tinker Bell, dressed in a leaf gown. So in this paragraph, what we have studied, the children goes for a sleep. Then there seemed another light which was brighter than the night light, who started searching Peter's shadow in the room of young children. The light was so bright, but when it came for rest, it was a fairy. You know children, fairy. So, you know fairy, Tinkerbell is a fairy, was a little fairy, and she was about as big as child's hand, and she moved about very quickly, and she spoke fairy language. Okay. So come to our next paragraph. A moment after the fairy's entrance, the window was blown open by the breathing of the little stars, and Peter dropped in. He had carried Tinkerbell part of the way, and his hand was still messy with the fairy dust. Fairy dust, you know? Fairy dust means glittery magical powder that fairies have. Tinkerbell, he called softly. Tinkerbell, he called softly after making sure that the children were asleep. Tinker, where are you? So in this paragraph, after the entry of Tinkerbell, Peter was dropped into the room, and Peter's hand was messy with the glittery powder of fairy Tinkerbell. He looked at the children. They were sleeping. Then he called Tinkerbell where she was. So in the next paragraph, she was in a jug for the moment and liking it extremely. She had never been in a jug before. Oh, do come out of the jug and tell me, do you know where they put my shadow? The loveliest tinkle as of golden bells answered him. It is the fairy language. You ordinary children can never hear it. But if you were to hear it, you would know that you had heard it once before. Tink said that the shadow was in the big box. She meant the chest of drawers. Chest of drawers, children, a piece of furniture used for storage that has only drawers. And Peter jumped at the drawers, scattering their contents to the floor with both hands. In a moment he had recovered his shadow, and in his delight he forgot that he had shut Tinker Bell up in the drawer. If he thought at all, but I don't believe he ever thought, it was that he and his shadow, when brought near each other, would join like drop of water, and when they did not, he was surprised. He tried to stick it with soap from the bathroom, but that also failed. A shudder. Shudder means a series of shivering and shaking. A shudder passed through Peter, and he sat on the floor and cried. So in this paragraph, Tinker was hidden in a jug, and she was extremely excited because she never hid in a jug before that. She found the jug. Nice place, and she was enjoying as it was a new adventure for her. Peter asked her to come out of the jug and helped him to find his shadow. They talked to each other in fairy language. Tinker told him that his shadow was in the big box, that means in the drawer. Peter impatiently jumped on the drawer and started searching with of his hands, and there he found his shadow. He was so delighted, he was so happy that he forgot that Tinker Bell was up in the drawer, and we shut her in that drawer. He did not think about Tinker Bell because he was delighted after getting his shadow back. He tried to join himself with his shadow, but he couldn't do that. He took the soap and tried to stick it, but that was also failed. He was surprised to see why he was not able to stick his shadow. Due to fear, he sat on the floor and cried. Clear? His soap woke Wendy and sat up in bed. She was not alarmed to see a stranger crying on the nursery floor. She was only pleasantly interested. Boy, she said kindly, why are you crying? Peter, having learned the grand manner at fairies' ceremonies, rose and bowed to her beautifully. She was much pleased and bowed beautifully to him from the bed. What is your name? He asked. Wendy, Moria, Angela, darling, she replied. What is your name? Peter Pan. It did seem a comparatively short name. Is that all? Yes, he said rather sharply. He felt for the first time that it was a short name. I'm sorry, said Wendy Moria Angela. It doesn't matter, Peter. It doesn't matter, Peter replied. She asked where he lived. Second to the right, said Peter, and then straight on till morning. What a funny address! Peter had sinking feeling. For the first time he felt that perhaps it was a funny address. No, it isn't, he said. Then Wendy saw the shadow on the floor looking so draggled. So children, what is the meaning of draggle? Draggle, dirty and wet. And she felt sorry for Peter. How awful, she said, but she couldn't help smiling when she saw that he had been trying to stick it on with soap. So children, in this paragraph, Peter was crying due to this Wendy. Wendy got pick up. When Peter was crying due to this, Wendy got pick up. Wendy was not shocked after seeing the boy crying, but she asked Peter why he was crying. Peter showed her manner by bowing to her beautifully. She also responded him in the same way. Then they started to communicate with each other. They shared their name. Wendy found Peter's name, a shortest one. Peter shared his address like second to the right and straight on till morning. Wendy smiled as it was a funny address. Meanwhile, Wendy saw the shadow on the floor, which was very dirty. She couldn't stop herself smiling when she saw that Peter was trying to stick his shadow with soap. So next paragraph. Fortunately, she knew at once what to do. I must be sewn on, she said. I shall sew it on for you, she said, and sewed the shadow onto Peter's foot. Dare say means I dare to say, I think it will hurt a little, she warned him. Oh, I shall not cry, I shan't cry, said Peter, who was already of opinion that he had never cried in his life, and he clenched. Clenched means here pressed together tightly his teeth and did not cry, and soon his shadow was behaving properly. Peter was now jumping about in the wildest glee. Wild glee means delight. Alas, he had already forgotten that when he was the one who attached his shadow. He thought he had attached the shadow himself. How clever I am, he crowed. Oh, the cleverness of me. So children, in this paragraph, Wendy gave the idea to Peter to sew on the shadow on Peter's foot. It would hurt a little. She warned him. Peter did not cry at all because he never cried in his life. He pressed his teeth tightly. Then he found that his shadow was behaving properly now. Again Peter was in delight and started jumping in happiness. He forgot that it was Wendy who attached his shadow to him. He thought himself he thought himself did not he thought himself did that and felt proud on himself. Delight and started jumping in happiness. He forgot that it was Wendy who attached his shadow to him. He thought he himself did that and felt proud on himself. So children, come to the last paragraph. Wendy was shocked. You you conceited boy, she exclaimed with sarcasm. Of, of course, I did nothing. Of course, I did nothing. You did a little, Peter said carelessly and continued to dance. A little, she exclaimed, and she sprang into bed and covered her face with the blankets. So children, here conceited. Conceited means extremely proud of oneself. Then sarcasm, saying the opposite of what one actually means. So in this paragraph, Wendy was looking at his behavior and shocked to see that. She said that she did not do anything. Peter was busy in dancing and said that she had done little and continued to dance. She shocked and went to bed and covered her face with blankets. So our last paragraph is Wendy was shocked. You conceited boy, she exclaimed with sarcasm. Of, of course I did nothing. So children, here is a meaning of sorry, conceited means extremely proud of oneself. And sarcasm means saying the opposite of what one actually means. So Wendy was shocked. You conceited boy, she exclaimed with sarcasm. Of, of course, I did nothing. You did a little, Peter said carelessly and continued to dance. A little, she exclaimed, and she sprang into bed and covered her face with the blanket. So in this paragraph, Wendy was looking at his behavior and shocked to see that. She said that she did not do anything. Peter was busy in dancing and said that she had done little and continued to dance. She shocked and went to bed and covered his face with a blanket. Clear? So students, I think this is clear to you. In this story, Peter Pan was a mischievous young boy who spent his never-ending childhood on the faraway magical island of Neverland with fairies. pirates, and mermaids. He occasionally visited on ordinary children too. One night, as Peter listened to Mrs. Darling's read bedtime story to his children, Wendy, John, Michael, and Nana, their dog, entered and sprung at Peter's. Sprung at Peter's. Peter escaped, but his shadow got left behind. After a few days later, Peter waited till the children were asleep and then returned with the fairy Tinker Bell to find his shadow lying on the floor. She felt sorry for Peter and sewed the shadow onto Peter's foot. After this, Peter started jumping and forgotten that Wendy was one who attached his shadow. He thought he had attached the shadow on his own and praised himself about his cleverness. Wendy was shocked and she sprang into bed and covered his face with a blanket. So this is how the story ends. So I hope children you have understood the story very well. So children, after the explanation of this chapter, there is a time for your assignment. Your assignments are: number 1, read the summary thoroughly. Children, read the summary thoroughly. Learn and write word meanings in your mulberry notebook. Word meanings. First, you learn the word meanings and write these in your mulberry notebook. Okay? So my dear students, we are ending up with today's class. Thank you for watching till the end. So we'll meet soon in another video class. Have a nice day. Bye. Take care children.